neatly taking us to the first section. The route this year, we're starting in, well, not in Paris. Well, it never really starts in Paris. Mat de la Ville. And they're basically going to do a circle on themselves. And in total, it's 159.8 kilometers with a few bumps towards the finish. The same categorized free climb, 1.2 kilometers long, 6.9% average, and yeah, coming towards the finish. So we are going to have sort of downhill before we get a small incline in a way towards the finish line. Do you think this is going to be anything too many gaps between the big GC guys?
No, I don't think you'll see the gaps between the GC guys there, just because the back half of the route is so stacked with categorized climbs. It's a lumpy one, isn't it? Which is a little bit unusual. There's more climbing, I think, in this edition of Paris-Nice than there has been for a long, long time. So that category 3 climb crests 6 kilometers just from the finish. So it could be one for a late break, you know? Could be, so, you know, Matteo Trentin might be eyeing that up. Wout van Aert come into this season red hot, or you've got, you know, every other team there will be fresh and keen to keep it together, because you've got a lot of sprinters in this race, and the opportunities for sprinting, there aren't many.
Well, speaking of one of them, stage 2, 159.2 kilometers, so a similar distance, and finishing in the very beautiful city of Orléans. A couple of categorized climbs at the beginning, but basically it looks like a fairly, well, not even like a flat stage, more like a descent in a way, a very, very gradual descent according to the profile. But
it's sort of as flat as it gets in this edition, isn't it? Stage 2. So I think we have to say that this is definitely, or this has got to be one for the sprinters. Otherwise, sort of, you know, come on boys, what's the point in turning up at all here? Let's say this is Fabio Jakobsen territory. We've seen Caleb Ewan today, and so, you know, quick step, we know they dominate the sprints early season. If it's going to be anyone, it's going to be him.
Then moving on to stage 3, Vasson to Pastel, 190.8 kilometers long. This is a bit more of a tricky affair in a way. The second half of the stage includes 3 categorized climbs, and towards the finish, we even have 2 climbs, one of them 2.5 kilometers, 3.3%, not too much of a kick, but after enduring most of that second half of the stage, do you think that potentially could throw in some problems here?
I think it's bound to. And the other thing that will throw a spanner into the works is echelons. One of the things that Paris-Nice is famous for. I think stage 3 it gets lumpier as it goes on, and this has to be one for the break, because then you've got, so stage 4, you've got the TT, and then it gets more savage as it goes from here, and very, very quickly and very, very steep.
What do you think of the time trial? Like you said, it's a short one, 13.4 kilometers. It's not the Col d'Es time trial that I would have loved to have in every single edition to kind of have a standard.
It favours Wout van Aert again, given how well he started the season. I don't mind a punchy time trial, but it's just sort of curious to have it that far into the race. You know, it still feels, a time trial that short, it still feels like it's one for the prologue, you know, just to give us an order before things really get going. But for the sake of variety, and I think so you're looking at Almeida did well at UAE in the time trial. I think he finished 5th overall. So he's got the form. I think he has to be, and again, I'm jumping ahead a little bit here. He has to feature there. But yeah, what do I think of it? I think there's certainly a place for it.
Moving on to stage 5, and this is, like you said, a more shock tooth affair. You've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 categorized climbs, and then one sort of uncategorized climb with an intermediate sprint near the end of the stage. But this looks like it could potentially be drawing out some of the bigger riders. And the final categorized climb, not even the intermediate sprint, 7.7 kilometers long and averaging 8.1%. And then the uncategorized climb before we get to this second intermediate sprint, averages 5.4%. So similar to that kind of finish with a downhill, and frustratingly not finishing on an uphill at this point.
No, but that's to come. So you're really going to see the big boys start to make their mark here, and you're going to see some time gaps in the GC, I think. early on. I think you'll still have everyone looking at Roglic and Jumbo-Visma at this point, given how strong a team they're going in with. But they're not the only ones with a very, very strong GC man with a very powerful team behind him.
So then moving on to stage 6, and we're not even in Nice yet, but we have 5 categorized climbs along the way here. About 30 kilometers from the finish, we get the top of the last categorized climb, 11 kilometers in total, 4.4%. And yeah, it just seems like this is another kind of whittling it down to the elite riders or the GC men, or potentially a breakaway as well.
Yeah, potentially. But I think, even if a break does go, the GC guys are not going to let them get that far. It'll be interesting to see who has sort of burned their chips on the previous stage. And whether you've already got sort of, guys chasing the race from, maybe they've lost more time than they thought they would in the time trial. You might have teams looking at, okay, well, this is where we can start to make the difference here. And if they haven't shared responsibility, on stage 5, then you might find that stage 6 is the stage where Ineos, Bahrain victorious with Jack Haig, they've gone, right, okay, we've sat in and let Jumbo do the work here. And stage 6 is the time that we might be able to make a difference.
So then we come to a stage that's actually starting in Nice, so making a mockery of the name Paris-Nice, 155.4 kilometers long. This is the big stage, the return of the Col de Turini, the climb that, of course, last was used in 2019. It was also used in the Tour de France in 2020. And in that 2019 stage, it was won by Dani Martinez. Of course, he wasn't riding for Ineos Grenadiers at that time. But Graham, do you think potentially this is where we really see a separation of the GC guys?
Yes, and yeah, of course. And Martinez is in the Ineos team, isn't he? So it's a climb that he knows well. It's a climb that he knows where to really put his foot down on. And so I think Ineos have really sort of picked their team smartly here. If he's won on it before, you often see riders going and doing it again, don't you? On the same parcours, on the same climbs. Your riders just have climbs that suit them. And this would seem to be one that among the other GC men, this might be one where Martinez is sort of given the go ahead. I'm assuming here that Ineos are riding for Adam Yates. And, like we say, Adam Yates is their main man. The pressure is in a way off of him, because he's not necessarily in Bernal's shadow. It's okay, well, our real go-to GC man is obviously still recovering from his horrendous crash. So look, Adam, go and see what you can do. He's come into the season on good form at UAE. Anyone who can stick that close to Pogacar, you sort of got to tip your hat to him.
I mean, he seems tremendous at the UAE Tour. He's not finished outside the top 2 in the last 3 years. How do you think Ineos can beat Primož Roglic with the team that they have on the start sheet, with the likes of Ethan Hayter, Mikhail Kwiatkowski, and Dylan van Baarle, of course?
Yeah, I mean, I think you're going to see a very similar sort of matchup as we did last year. And when the going gets tough, and then you start to see the peloton really stretch out. Kwiatkowski, we know just what a phenomenal domestique he is, and Luke Rowe, sort of one of the all-time road captains, and Van Baarle is well capable of dragging through those echelons early doors and sustaining that into the climbs at the end of the race. So they've got matching them up with Jumbo-Visma. Jumbo are going with Dennis, which there's quite a nice early season rivalry there, having left Ineos and sort of Ineos having paid for him not to race, it seemed, for the second half of last season. Stefan Kreischvik, we know how good he is. Christophe Laporte, we saw him today on the front. So we're recording on the Sunday before Paris-Nice, so Brussels-Kuurne. We saw him as part of the breakaway, looking as strong as anyone. Roglic, we know, well, we think will almost certainly be their man, main man. Mike Turnison, Wout van Aert, the best cyclist and the best road cyclist, male road cyclist in the world. Sorry. At the moment, and Nathan van Hooydonk. Those two teams, they're not that far from possibly the most of the guys you might well see them go to the Tour with.
Anyway, stage 8, Nice to Nice, 115.6 kilometers, so the shortest road stage apart from the time trial. But what have we got here? We've got 5 categorized climbs, and of course the most noteworthy one, potentially, well, all of them are going to be hard for them, but the last one is the Col d'Ez, synonymously associated with Paris-Nice, and again, not finishing up on an uphill, more of a descent than we've seen on the other stages. Well, we've seen dramatic stages before in Paris-Nice. There was the famous one where Alberto Contador lost the title by a second to Sergio Henao. Do you think we could potentially be in a scenario like that again?
Of course we could, and I'd love it if we were. Col d'Air, it's a shame not to be finishing on the top. So I think it crests with 15Ks to go, doesn't it? So you've got a little while if you have lost time going up and you've got nothing to lose at that point. You might as well go all in for the descent. Whereas if you're out in front, you've got it all to lose, so to speak. So as a man who doesn't always stay on his bike, that might make things interesting if, say, Roglic has put time into his nearest competitors going up and over the top. They've got 15Ks to get it back. So I really hope at that stage of the race, it is all to play for, and you don't just have teams marking each other and the main men playing it safe.